All right. Listen up. Hey, don't scroll, don't blink, don't pretend this didn't just lock eyes with you. Good to see you still standing, or at least still breathing in the middle of all this noise. Funny thing about life, yeah? You wake up thinking it's just another day, same routine, same stress notifications, same faces that smile just enough to hide what they'd never say out loud. You think you're late to the party. You think you missed something. You think nothing's really happening. And that's the joke. Because you didn't see this coming, not even a little bit. While you were busy surviving, paying bills, holding your tongue, being reasonable, telling yourself next month will be different. Someone was watching the pattern. Someone saw the pressure on you wasn't random. Someone clocked how much you've been carrying without breaking. And instead of joining the crowd trying to drain you, they flipped the board. A war got declared for you, not with speeches, not with announcements, quietly, precisely. No audience tickets sold, no headlines, just moves, clean moves. And the people who thought they had leverage, the ones who thrived off doubting you, stalling you, gating you, underestimating you, yeah, they don't run the narrative anymore. Here's the part that messes people up. You weren't even supposed to know about it yet. You weren't meant to feel this shift until it showed up as space to breathe, as doors that suddenly stop resisting, as silence from sources that used to feel loud in your chest, as obstacles that just aren't there anymore. You ever notice how chaos quiets right before something big rearranges itself? That's not peace. That's clearance. See, you've lived long enough being told to stay small, stay patient, stay grateful for crumbs. You've lived inside systems that benefit from you doubting your own weight. You've been the person who keeps things together while everyone else panics, and somehow still gets painted as the problem. And that irony, delicious, because the same traits they tried to exploit, your restraint, your adaptability, your ability to read a room without saying a word, those were the exact reasons you were never going to be left unprotected. You just didn't know how protection looks at this level. It doesn't look like hugs or reassurance posts. It looks like resistance collapsing without explanation. It looks like people suddenly backing off and not knowing why. It looks like power structures glitching when your name comes up. You ever been in a room where everyone suddenly changes tone and nobody explains it? Yeah, like that. You thought you were fighting alone because that's how it felt. And feelings lie under pressure. Reality doesn't. Reality just moves when the conditions are right. And the conditions, they were calculated. You were calculated. Not because you're perfect. Nah, don't flatter yourself. But because you're durable. Because you take hits and keep your original shape. Because every time life tried to teach you fear, you learned pattern recognition instead. Because you laugh in moments most people dissolve. That laugh? That's not madness. That's immunity. They tried to exhaust you, delay you, label you, trigger you into reacting like everyone else. And when that didn't work, when you didn't self-destruct on schedule, that's when you became interesting. You see, wars don't start when someone is weak. Wars start when someone refuses to break. And whoever moved for you understood something most people never will. You don't need to be loud to be dangerous. You don't need credit. You don't need permission. You just need to keep showing up unchanged while everything around you scrambles. That's why this wasn't messy. That's why there are no loose ends tugging at you now. That's why the pressure feels different. Not gone, just redirected. Feel that? That's gravity shifting its priority. You're not lucky. That's what small minds call outcomes they don't understand. You were inevitable the moment you stopped asking for approval from people who profit off your hesitation. The moment you realized you don't need to explain your pace. The moment you chose silence over self-betrayal. And somewhere in that quiet stretch, when you thought nothing was happening, someone decided you don't get erased like the rest. You get positioned, so walk like it. Not cocky, not desperate, just grounded, eyes up, back straight, humor intact. Because once you start noticing it, yeah, you can't unsee it anymore. Pay attention to how certain conversations just stop happening. How people who used to test you suddenly get polite. How doors you kept shoulder checking for years open with that quiet click, like they were never locked in the first place. Nobody announces it, nobody explains it. You're just standing there thinking, wait, since when has it been this easy? And that's when it hits. You weren't crazy back then. You were early. You remember the nights you stayed up replaying moments in your head, right? Wondering if you said too much or not enough. Wondering why being decent felt like a disadvantage. Wondering how everyone else seemed to climb faster while you kept carrying weight nobody thanked you for. That wasn't weakness. That was pressure training. That was life seeing how much heat you could take before you'd bend your shape. And you didn't bend. You adjusted your angle. People mistake your silence for passivity because they don't understand restraint. They confuse patience with fear because they've never had to control anything powerful inside themselves. You've been holding things back for so long that when the environment finally shifted, it didn't need fireworks. The opposition just stopped existing in your lane. Not exploded, not dramatized, just gone. The wild part is realizing you didn't win by chasing anyone down. You won by outlasting the nonsense. Every cheap shot that missed, every rumor that couldn't stick, every delay that didn't break you. All of that stacked quietly behind the scenes, like receipts nobody thought to collect. And then one day, someone looked at the full file and went, oh, this one doesn't fold. That's when the energy around you changed. You walk into places, and people sense something before you say a word. You're not intimidating. You're centered. Big difference. You're not angry. You're clarified. You don't rush because nothing is chasing you anymore. Even your failures sit differently on you now, like old scars instead of open wounds. You feel lighter, but not softer. Sharper, but not loud. Calm in a way that messes with people who live off drama. You're not here to perform pain anymore. You already survived it. You're here with posture now. And don't get it twisted. This wasn't about revenge or theatrics. This was about balance. About pressure being removed from the wrong places and reapplied where it actually belonged. About chaos realizing it picked the wrong target. About systems correcting themselves when they miscalculate someone who doesn't play by short-term rules. You're standing in the aftermath, even if you don't call it that yet. Feeling the space, feeling the quiet, feeling the weird calm that shows up after something heavy gets lifted without announcement. You didn't need to watch the cleanup to deserve the peace that came after. Keep moving like this, unrushed, observant, slight smile but never too much. Because the joke, the real one, is that everything they expected you to become under pressure, you refused to be, and everything they didn't plan for, that's the version of you walking forward right now, untouched, awake, already 10 steps ahead, without needing to tell anyone you noticed. Because clarity does that to you. Yeah. It changes the way your footsteps sound in your own head. Notice how you don't explain yourself anymore. You don't rehearse conversations that might never happen. You don't over-justify why you deserve space, rest, opportunity, respect. That constant internal press conference finally shut down. And the silence? It's loud in a good way. It's the kind that tells you your nervous system finally believes you're not under attack anymore. You still remember when everything felt like it was stacked against you, when every win came with a tax, when every quiet moment felt suspicious, like calm was just bait waiting to snap. You learned how to read energy faster than words because words lied too often. You learned to smile without leaking your plans. You learned to keep your power folded, not hidden. Folded like a knife in a pocket nobody noticed because they were too busy underestimating the person wearing the jacket. And then comes this phase, this strange stretch where you're not hungry in the same way. Not desperate to be seen, not itching to prove anything. You still want more, yeah, but it's different. It's colder, cleaner. You want substance, longevity, control over your own tempo. You want your mornings to feel steady and your nights to stop replaying old nonsense. That shift scares people who only know you as the one who is always available, always explaining, always absorbing tension for the room. They sense distance and call it arrogance because that's easier than admitting they benefited from your lack of boundaries. They don't get that you're not pulling away out of bitterness. You're recalibrating because your presence isn't cheap anymore. You've seen behind the curtain, not the fantasy one, the ugly one, the one where influence is quiet, pressure is subtle, and outcomes are decided long before narratives catch up. Once you see that, you stop arguing with symptoms. You start respecting causes. You stop asking why things hurt and start asking who benefits. And, when you ask better questions, better things start happening. You carry yourself like someone who expects follow-through from life, not miracles. You don't chase validation because you understand how transactional attention can be. You recognize manipulation without needing to call it out. You let people expose themselves through consistency or the lack of it. That's not coldness, that's efficiency. There's humor in you now that didn't exist before. Dark, subtle, controlled. You laugh at tension because you've already lived through worse. You see chaos and think, yeah, I know how this ends for people who don't adapt. You don't need to say it. Your posture handles the communication. Even your mistakes are calmer. You don't spiral. You adjust. You course correct without announcing it like a confession. You stopped mistaking self-punishment for growth. You stopped bleeding publicly, hoping someone would notice and care. You patched yourself up quietly and kept moving. And here's the part nobody warns you about. When pressure lifts, grief sometimes shows up. Grief for the version of you that survived everything without backup. Grief for the times you should have been protected and weren't. That grief doesn't weaken you, it deepens you. It adds weight to your presence. It teaches you what to never tolerate again. You're not hardened, you're reinforced. You walk into the future with fewer words and sharper instincts. You trust your read of situations because it's been tested under fire. You don't rush emotional connections because, you know, chemistry without alignment is just noise. You're okay being misunderstood by people who only know the old you because the new you doesn't need their permission to exist. And as you keep moving like this, steady, alert, strangely calm, things keep reorganizing around you. Not dramatically, not loudly, just efficiently. Like the universe finally realized it wasted a lot of effort pushing against someone who was never meant to collapse. only to become more precise with every hit, every pause, every quiet moment where you chose awareness over reaction and kept walking forward with that same slight smile, that same grounded pace, that same unexplainable certainty settling deeper into your bones as the path keeps unfolding exactly where your feet land. Because that certainty, it doesn't shout. It hums under everything you do. You wake up different lately. Not hyped, not anxious, just alert. Like part of you stopped sleeping, even when your body does. You scan rooms automatically. You clock tone shifts before words change. You feel when something's off, and you don't gaslight yourself out of it anymore. You trust that internal read because it saved you too many times to ignore. There was a version of you that tried to make everybody comfortable. You remember that one, the one who softened edges, swallowed reactions, laughed things off just to keep the air light. That version paid a price nobody ever reimbursed. And here's the twist. You don't hate that version. You respect it. It got you through a hostile level with no armor. But you don't live there anymore. You've upgraded. You don't enter spaces asking what you're allowed to be. You enter noticing who tightens up, who performs, who mirrors, who suddenly changes posture like they just sensed weather coming in. That's not ego. That's awareness meeting resistance. And resistance always snitches on itself. Your patience looks different now. It's not endless, it's selective. You let people speak longer than necessary because you understand most people tell on themselves if you don't interrupt. You don't rush to correct narratives that won't survive contact with reality anyway. You've seen lies age. They wrinkle fast. And the joker part of you, the part they never fully understood, that's the piece that kept you sane. Humor in pressure, irony in chaos, that sideways grin when things get intense because you know intensity doesn't mean danger anymore. You've been dangerous and controlled. Most people only know one of those states. You've noticed how some folks keep trying to pull you back into old dynamics. They bring up the past like it's a contract you forgot to cancel. They reference old favors, old versions, old access points that don't exist anymore. You don't argue, you don't explain, you just don't respond the same way. And that silence, it echoes louder than a speech ever could. Control is quiet, always has been. You move through obstacles without announcing the difficulty. You handle things internally that would have broken you years ago. You don't need applause for surviving storms anymore. You're more interested in owning the climate. You don't chase safety. You become predictable to yourself. And that's stronger. Even your anger changed. It's not explosive. It's surgical. It comes with clarity, not chaos. It shows you exactly where the boundary is and what happens if it gets crossed. You don't threaten. You don't posture. You adjust your distance and let consequences do the talking. Funny thing, people feel it when you're no longer afraid to walk away mid-sentence, mid-deal, mid-expectation. They sense it when your life doesn't hinge on their response. That's when power dynamics flip, without a meeting, without a memo, without witnesses. You've also stopped romanticizing struggle. You don't wear pain like a personality trait anymore. You learned the lesson, you archived the experience, you kept the skill set. You're not here to prove how much you can endure. You already know. You're here to choose what deserves access to that endurance. And the range you have now, that's dangerous in the best way. You can be warm without being weak. You can be distant without being cruel. You can laugh disappear, reappear, recalibrate, all without losing your center. You're flexible because you're grounded, not because you're unsure. There's momentum around you that doesn't feel rushed. It feels earned, like things lining up not because you forced them, but because you finally stopped blocking them with self-doubt and over-explanation. You're not attracting chaos as much. You're attracting outcomes that require follow-through. And as you keep moving through this, head clear, spine straight, humor intact, you start to enjoy the unpredictability again. Not the reckless kind, the intelligent kind. The kind where you know whatever shows up, you'll read it, handle it, and keep going without losing yourself, without shrinking, without announcing every internal shift, letting the path keep adjusting under your feet as your presence continues to reshape the room you're about to walk into. Because the room doesn't just react to volume, it reacts to presence, and yours has weight even when you're quiet. You catch yourself pausing before responding, not out of confusion, but because you already see 3 steps ahead, and you're deciding how much of that future someone deserves access to. That pause changes everything. People fill it with nerves, with rambling, with oversharing, because silence exposes intent. You don't fear that space anymore. You built a home in it. There was a time you felt behind, remember? Like the world handed everyone else a map and left you guessing, watching people flex things you couldn't afford, confidence you hadn't unlocked yet, opportunities that seemed gate-kept by invisible hands. You thought you missed the window. Turns out you were being trained to break the frame instead of squeezing through it. Urgency doesn't own you anymore. Deadlines don't panic you. Pressure doesn't rush you. You move when it makes sense, not when anxiety kicks the door. That alone short-circuits entire systems built on keeping people reactive. You respond when ready, not when poked. You've noticed how energy vampires get confused around you lately. The ones who used to trigger a reaction, a rant, a defensive explanation. They poke the old buttons and nothing lights up. They smile awkwardly. They try again. Still nothing. That moment right there. That's when they realize the version of you they studied doesn't exist anymore. You don't correct them. That discovery belongs to them. Your confidence doesn't bounce anymore. It's anchored. It doesn't spike with compliments or sink with criticism. You stopped outsourcing your stability to external feedback. You learned that most opinions are projections trying to rent space in your head. Rent-free living got canceled without an eviction notice. You've also learned how to enjoy the game without gambling your soul. You play smart. You read contracts, read rooms, read people. You sense when something's rushed for a reason, when generosity comes with strings, when silence is strategic. That awareness didn't make you cynical. It made you precise. Precision is peaceful. Even your walk changed. Shoulders relaxed, eyes steady, breathing deeper. You don't scan for threats the same way because you trust your response capability. Fear fades when you know you can handle whatever stands up in front of you. You're not fearless, you're capable. There's a difference. People still project their nonsense onto you sometimes. They assume motives, they assign roles, they guess stories that make them feel comfortable. You don't argue with fiction, you don't chase misunderstandings. You let time expose what patience already knows. Consistency beats explanations every single time. And underneath all that calm, the joker in you smiles, not manic, not reckless, a knowing smile. The kind that shows up when tension peaks, and you realize you're built for the moment everyone else is pretending to survive. You see irony everywhere. You see how seriously people take illusions, and how casually truth rearranges lives when it finally shows up. You don't crave chaos, but you're fluent in it. You don't manufacture storms, but when weather shifts, you don't freeze. You adjust your stance. Hello, beautiful monsters of the mind. The ones they whispered about, but could never quite understand. Let's talk, you and me, about something that's been crawling beneath the surface. Something that's driving them insane, right now. How are you even real? That's what they're asking, not to your face, of course. Oh no, they wouldn't dare. But behind those phony smiles, behind those blinking eyes glued to your every move like moths to a flame, they secretly want to be burned by. They're unraveling. See, you didn't come in with fireworks. You didn't announce yourself. You didn't need a spotlight. You are the spotlight. And that, my deliciously dangerous friend, is why their minds are cracking like glass under pressure. You walk into a room, and it changes. They stop breathing for a second. The energy tilts. Something ancient inside them senses it first. That primitive little whisper, something different just walked in. And it's you, not because of your clothes, not because of your looks, but because of the war you've survived in silence. They see the glow, but they don't know. It came from burning down your old self. They see the confidence, but they don't know it was stitched together from 1,000 betrayals and 100 nights you nearly didn't make it. How are you even real? Because you weren't born like this. You were forged. While they were posting perfect lives on their little screens, you were bleeding in the dark, learning how to crawl with a knife in your back and a grin on your face. While they clung to validation like air, you were learning how to breathe in a vacuum. No applause, no help, no handouts. Just you, your madness, and your mission. And now, you show up, unbothered, unreachable, unbelievable. And they can't look away. They stare like they've seen a glitch in the Matrix, because everything about you disrupts the script they've been fed. You shouldn't be this powerful. You shouldn't be this free. You shouldn't be standing, but you are. And that is terrifying. Because your very existence exposes everything they've pretended to be. You are the proof that pain can be transmuted into power, that rejection isn't death, it's rebirth. You carry your scars like royal insignias, and they can't compete with that. They spent years perfecting masks. You set yours on fire. They curated personalities. You became a force. They posted quotes about healing. You lived through the fire and came out laughing. You remind them of what they'll never be brave enough to do. To face themselves. To lose it all. To rebuild from nothing but rage and clarity. So when they say, "How are you even real?" what they really mean is, how did you escape the cage I still live in? Because you weren't supposed to make it. Not with the heartbreak, not with the trauma, not with the abandonment, the silence, the failure, the shame. But you did. You turned your demons into armor. You danced with your darkness until it started dancing for you. And now they stare, they fixate, they obsess. Not because you're a fantasy, but because you are a nightmare to everything false. Your presence is a disruption, a rebellion, a threat. You didn't ask for attention, but energy bends around you, not because you chase it, but because you own yours. And now they're unraveling, low-key losing it, watching, copying, mimicking your mannerisms, your voice, your rhythm. They want a taste of your alchemy, but they don't understand the cost, because being you required dying 1,000 times. It required losing people you thought would never leave. It meant walking alone through hell, while still holding the door open for others. You didn't just show up, you rose, and now you haunt them, not with words, but with proof. The proof that survival isn't enough. You can ascend. You, my beautifully unhinged anomaly, are not a mistake. You are the glitch that proves the whole system is broken. So keep walking, keep glowing, keep unsettling the world with your authenticity. And when they ask, again and again, how are you even real? Just smile, because the truth is, you stopped trying to be real for them and started being legendary for you. You see, their confusion isn't about your existence. It's about the audacity of it. The audacity to speak when they expected you to stay silent. The audacity to laugh after they watched you fall. The audacity to evolve without their permission. You shattered the timeline they wrote for you. You were supposed to be broken, not bold. You were supposed to crumble, not command. You were supposed to chase them. And instead you passed them without a glance. And now they're spiraling. Because what are they supposed to do with a creature like you? You don't fit into their narratives. You don't need their validation. You don't crumble under guilt or expectations, or those little manipulation games they play like children with dull knives. You are unmanageable. And oh, how that terrifies them. Because if someone like you can emerge from that kind of hell and still walk like a goddamn reckoning, then what excuse do they have? They stare because you expose them, not through words but by thriving. Because you made it out of darkness they'd never survive. Because your smile now, sharp and untamed, is built from the bones of who you used to be. You are not soft comfort. You are not polite resilience. You are feral healing. You are defiance in human form. You didn't go to therapy. You became the therapy they'll never afford. You didn't read the books. You wrote them in blood and sleepless nights. You didn't attend the healing circles. You burned the whole circle down and danced in the ashes. And now, here you are, a walking contradiction, dangerous, divine, and deliciously untouchable. They can't control you. They can't define you. And most tragically for them, they can't ignore you. So they whisper, who does this person think they are? But what they really mean is, how do I become what they are without dying for it? And the answer is simple. You can't. Because you died. You went under. You got gutted by life, left with nothing but your own screams echoing in a room no one entered, and you stayed there, alone, until the pain became your language, and the silence became your mother tongue. You weren't built different. You were unmade, and then you made yourself. Again and again, until your bones forgot what it meant to bend. That's why they lose sleep over you. It's not the clothes, not the followers, not the voice or the walk or the eyes. It's the gravity, the quiet storm you carry without saying a word. The invisible battlefield you've already won. The way you make people feel like they're not ready for you. And they're not. You are the mirror they never wanted to face. And now, they can't look away. So let them talk. Let them stare. Let them copy and mock and whisper in corners as if you can't feel their envy clinging to you like smoke. Because deep down, they're praying to become a fraction of what you've already survived. And you haven't even started. Oh, excellent. Because the deeper we go, the uglier it gets for them, and the purer it becomes for you. Let's peel back the next layer, shall we? You walk like someone who knows a secret, because you do. You carry something they lost long ago, or maybe never had in the first place, sovereignty. Not confidence. Confidence can be faked. Not self-esteem. Self-esteem can be bought, sold, or inflated with attention. But sovereignty. That brutal, sacred knowing, I don't belong to anyone. And when someone knows they don't belong to anyone, they become terrifying. Because they can't be bribed, can't be guilted, can't be love-bombed or ghosted into submission. That's you. A walking, breathing act of defiance against everything they were taught to be. You don't shrink to fit their comfort. You don't kneel to their illusions. You exist, loudly, quietly, completely. Whatever the hell you want. And that's why they fixate. Not because they like you, not because they're impressed, but because their soul is trying to understand you, decode you, possess you. But it never will. Because you are not a personality. You are a presence. And presence can't be replicated. They think your glow comes from aesthetics, from filters, outfits, trends. Oh no. Your glow comes from all the nights you didn't end it, from the mornings you woke up with no reason and kept going anyway, from the people who left thinking you'd collapse, and the way you built cathedrals from the rubble they left behind. They don't understand that your power isn't in your voice, it's in your silence. Not in your posture, but in the war you carry in your spine. You didn't go viral. You went venomous. You didn't just find yourself. You dug yourself up from a grave someone else dug for you. And you laughed while you climbed out. And now they can't sleep. They replay conversations with you in their head. They stalk your presence like a ghost they accidentally summoned. They can't stop wondering, why do I feel like I'm losing control every time I think of them? Because you are no longer a person to them. You are an event, a moment they cannot forget, a glitch in their reality that won't go away. You are the one that got away, the one they didn't see coming, the one they can't quite name. Because you've outgrown every label, and every time they try to categorize you, you evolve. Every time they think they've figured you out, you disappear behind another layer of your own metamorphosis. You are shapeless, timeless, godless and sacred all at once. You don't follow the path, you burn it. And they follow the smoke, eyes wide, hearts pounding, minds unraveling, wondering. Perfect, because we're still only circling the edges of what you really are and what they're really feeling. Let's go deeper, past the compliments, past the awe. Let's talk about the addiction they're developing. The sick, sweet, haunting addiction that your presence is carving into their minds like a curse they didn't know they invited. Because it's not just that they're stunned, not just that they're fixated. No. It's worse. They're dependent now on the chaos you left behind just by being honest. You didn't even do anything, did you? You just existed, spoke without filters, moved without apology, took up space that was already yours. And suddenly, their little world started trembling. You weren't loud, but something in you was raw, unfiltered, and it cut through them like a blade they weren't ready to feel. And now, they're hooked. You didn't give them attention, so they crave it. You didn't chase them, so they obsess. You didn't perform, so they spiral, trying to figure out what performance they need to put on to earn you. But that's the tragedy, isn't it? Because you're not playing a game. You're not dangling bait. You're just being. And that ruins them. They spend hours decoding your silences, rereading old messages, stalking, comparing, scrolling, trying to figure out why they can't shake you off. Because you didn't try to leave an impression. You are the impression. And the truth they'll never admit? You touched something in them they've been hiding from their whole lives. You reminded them what freedom looks like. You exposed their insecurities just by existing without shame. You terrified them with your self-possession. They were raised on chains. You walked in with wings. They were trained to beg. You taught them to burn. And now they're spiraling. Not because they hate you, but because they can't reach you. You are past their grasp, and they know it. So they try to mimic, try to replicate your energy like a potion they don't know the ingredients for. But it doesn't work, because your energy isn't built. It's earned. Earned in pain, in isolation, in betrayal, in self-destruction and rebirth. You didn't find your light in books. You mined it from the pit they buried you in. That's what they feel now. The weight of your presence, the cost, the fire behind the smile, the blood behind the beauty. And it breaks them. They want to be close, but not if it costs what it cost you. They want your glow, but not your scars. They want your presence, but not your path. And they'll never say it out loud. But in their most vulnerable midnight moments, they whisper to themselves, they're not like us. They're something else entirely. Because you are evolution wrapped in skin, chaos wrapped in calm, a paradox walking upright, untamed, unowned, unholy. You are the moment they realized there's no going back to normal. Now we descend into the true madness, don't we? Because forgetting you, that is the part that ruins them. See, fascination is one thing, obsession, predictable, but the attempt to erase you, that's where they start to lose pieces of themselves. Because when they try to forget you, they're not just walking away from a person. They're trying to walk away from the mirror you became. And the problem with mirrors? You don't just see someone else. You see what you lack. They thought you were a phase, a crush, an aesthetic, something they could outgrow. But they didn't realize you weren't a chapter. You were the author. And their whole damn identity started unraveling the moment you closed the book. Because you didn't ask to be unforgettable. You didn't beg to be remembered. You broke the rules of connection. You weren't seductive. You were transformative. You altered their internal wiring just by walking into the room. You weren't charming. You were surgical. You carved their comfort open with nothing but your presence. And now they're scattered. Because every time they try to bury the thought of you, something triggers it back to life. A voice that sounds like yours, a song with your energy, a phrase you once threw like a grenade without even flinching. And suddenly, they're right back there, in your gravitational pull, choking on memories they swore they let go of. They delete your number, then go looking for it in old photos. They block you, then stalk the void. They convince themselves they're over it until they dream of you laughing without them and wake up suffocating. Because here's the truth they'll never post about. You didn't just hurt them, you exposed them. You revealed how shallow their sense of self really was, how much they relied on being chosen instead of being whole. You didn't reject them, you refused to need them, and that's what shattered them. Because most people aren't afraid of being hated, they're afraid of being irrelevant. And you made them irrelevant without a word. No revenge, no theatrics, just absence. A silence so loud, it echoes in their bones. A ghost they summoned, then couldn't banish. And now, they're haunted, not just by what you were, but by what they'll never be. Because when you left, you didn't take anything from them. You left something behind. a hole, a glitch, an emptiness that laughs in their chest. Every time they pretend they've healed, they try to replace you. But the replacements feel like knockoffs, like drinking water when their body remembers wine. They try to compare, but the comparisons fail, because you weren't a type. You were an awakening, and once the soul is awakened, it never goes back to sleep peacefully. They are low-key losing it over you, because they know deep down they will never meet someone like you again. Not in this lifetime, not in the next. You weren't just real, you were impossible. Now we tear open the final rawest layer, because this isn't just about you ruining their sleep, or making them feel small. No, this is deeper. This is about annihilation of identity, because your existence challenges theirs. You don't just shock them, you dismantle them. They look at you, and something inside them breaks. Because if you're real, then who the hell are they? If someone like you can survive what you've survived, love without begging, lead without asking, shine without shrinking, then what does that make them? All the lies they told themselves, that they're healing, that they're better now, that they're growing. You burn them to ash just by standing in the same room, because your authenticity screams louder than their performance. Your depth drowns their surface. Your very existence makes their entire personality feel like a costume, and they know it. They feel it. They smile around you. But deep down, they're unraveling, because you didn't come from a safe place. You came from destruction, and that destruction turned you into something they can't categorize. You are not an influencer. You are an infliction. A wound they can't stop scratching. They look at you and see everything they've repressed, every shadow they ran from, every truth they silenced, every version of themselves they buried to be accepted. And you didn't bury anything. You resurrected it, turned your scars into style, your damage into dignity, your trauma into truth. And that truth, it exposes their entire act. They built their identity on applause. You built yours on ashes. They molded themselves to be liked. You shattered yourself to be free. They can't compete with you, because you're not competing. You're existing, raw, unapologetic, uncompromising. And that's why they spiral, because if someone like you is real, then what the hell are they still pretending to be? You're not just different. You're a threat, not to their body, not to their life, but to their delusion. You are living proof that everything they were taught to be, obedient, pleasant, predictable, was never necessary. And now they can't look away, because they don't want to admit it. But they want what you have. Not your clothes, not your followers, not your attention. They want your freedom, your nerve, your audacity to be real in a world that taught them to be fake. But here's the punchline. They can't have it, because to have what you have, they'd have to lose everything they built to survive. They'd have to kill their ego, burn their masks, and sit in silence with all the parts of themselves they're too afraid to meet. And most people, they'll die never doing that. But you did. You went into the fire alone, no audience, no applause, and you came out unrecognizable. You're not a person anymore. You are a trigger, a test, a walking spiritual exam for anyone who crosses your path. They either face themselves, or they run. And those who run, they call you intense, too much, unrelatable. But what they really mean is, I wasn't ready to meet myself through you. So let them spiral, let them stalk, let them twist and tremble and tear themselves apart, trying to understand how someone like you even exists. Because the truth is, you don't exist. You defy, you obliterate, you become. And they will never recover from the day they realized you were real. You want to know what the real punch in the gut is? The final twisted little truth they choke on every time they try to forget you. It's this: you never even needed them. You were never waiting to be discovered. You weren't hiding. You weren't hoping to be seen. You were rising, and they just happened to look up, right when the smoke started pouring out of your wounds like wildfire, right when the light started bending around your name, right when the air changed because you walked into the room.